It takes a lot of ingredients to fix or build a car, like cooking, but without the frozen dinner easy way out. eBay Motors has 122 million parts. It's always the right fitment, so you can follow any recipe to a T. Whether it's a vintage Italian coupe that's classic like Grandma's meatballs or a German luxury car that's as complicated as Oma's rouladen, to cook up something great in the garage, use the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Ethos DFS Today podcast. I am your host, Mike Apaccia, riding solo for this nice 9-game card we have on our hands. It is a wonderful December 29th. It's a Wednesday. Got some good games to break down here. A couple teams on backs-to-backs, every team dealing with health and safety protocols. So a lot of news to monitor, a lot of news to get to, a lot of people in and out of lineups creating value for us, but it's exciting times when you're playing. I mean, it's negative times. Let's get that right out of the way with all the health and safety protocols. Obviously, we want to see these studs play as many games as they can. No one likes slates without Jason Tatum and Collins and a lot of these other guys that we'll get to. But it creates value. It opens up opportunity. It allows those who monitor the news and keep track of everything going on to have an edge. And if you're playing DFS, an edge is the most important thing that you could have. So before we jump into anything, just a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor over at Thrive Fantasy. Guys, come prop up with us on Thrive Fantasy. This NBA season, it is a daily fantasy sports and esports app for player props. With Thrive, you eliminate the countless hours of research and focus only on the top tier athletes that have the biggest impact on the game. So how do you play? Well, you join the lobbies, you choose 10 out of 20 available player props, build your lineup. Each prop is assigned a fantasy value for both the over and under based on how likely it is to hit. Hit the most props, rack up the most points, and win your share of the prize pool. Thrive is awarded over $50,000 in guaranteed prizes weekly. And for the NBA, over $6 million thus far. So use that promo code ETHOS, ETHOS, when you sign up, and you will receive a 100% instant first deposit match on up to $100, guys. Download Thrive Fantasy in the App Store or Play Store, or visit their website at www.thrivefantasy.com. Sign up and prop today. So that's promo code ETHOS, ETHOS. 9 games on the docket, all by my lonesome. So you'll probably hear me motor through some of these games. And, sometimes that's easier, right? We've heard both things. Spend more time, spend less time. And simply because, at the end of the day, we're lowering our player pool. So you know this already. If you're in our Discord, you hear me say my most owned players. There's a lot of people I like. There's a lot of people that we look at keeping the player pool. But at the end of the day, we have to narrow down these player pools. We have to narrow down these games to the ones that we want to hit the most on. So that's kind of why I go a little bit quicker sometimes. You get to hear who I'm more excited about, and I try not to mention the players I don't see myself having much ownership in. So make it a little bit easier. New York Knicks traveling to Detroit, New York on the second half of a back-to-back. So we are not going to have that injury report at the moment. We're going to have to keep an eye on it. But we do have the Pistons, and it's a long one. Cade Cunningham, Jeremy Grant, Killian Hayes, Josh Jackson, Corey Joseph, Saban Lee, Isaiah Livers, Trey Lyles, Rodney McGruder, Kelly Olynyk, Chris Smith, and Isaiah Stewart have all already been ruled out. No game total for this one, so we'll jump right into things. Look at this New York Knicks team. They're on the second half of a back-to-back here. Playing Minnesota tonight, we're kind of seeing a lot of what we expected. Emmanuel quickly was announced back, but he did not play in this one due to health and safety protocols and conditioning because of it. So he was available, but not really playing any minutes. So we have to keep an eye on that. I would expect him to probably play on the second half of a back-to-back. He'll likely be limited in some facet where he's not going to play a full workload. So it's not like he's a guy that we're playing. But it definitely affects guys like Kemba Walker, who I think it's been everybody's favorite DFS play. Not mine tonight. He's burning me a little bit on tonight's slate. I was warranting the fade on it. But once I saw that there's a decent chance quickly wasn't going to get any minutes, I hopped right back on board, and I'm paying the piper on that one. He's having a pretty down game. But for the most part, you can go back to the well with Kemba. I wouldn't fault you that much. I think he'll be a good GPP pivot. I wouldn't trust him as much in cash with so many point guards in that same range, which we'll get to, that I do have interest in. So he's a pivot at most, and we're also expecting McBride to be back in this one. Another guy who out of the health and safety protocols. He was cleared to play. Now they got 3 guards. It's not the same situation where they brought Kemba back off the bench and playing him 40-plus minutes. So nothing more than GPPs, and I think we can definitely look at a guy like Quentin Grimes as well. He's been playing the minutes, getting back up there. First game back, he played 25. Looks like he's right around that 28 range tonight, and good games in both games. So 4K, decent value play. Is he the guy that you build around? Probably not, but he's certainly in play for me. And I don't think I'll be going necessarily to this front court. Julius Randle up to 10-8. I'm not playing Burks at 72. Mitchell Robinson had himself a game tonight. I'm not chasing that at 5K. Again, very similar situation to Kemba, where I just think we have better plays available. I don't think we necessarily need to go there. And on to the Detroit Pistons. It's a good matchup for him right here. I think Frank Jackson at 53 would be my top target over here. There's just no point guards available. He's not your traditional point guard where he's going to rack up, 7 or 8 assists or anything like that. But he's going to play a boatload of minutes. There's no doubt about that. He's going to get his handful of minutes. He's going to get his shot attempts. You can even look at Derek Walton Jr. if you need a 3,400 minimum salary type player, simply because these are 2 of the only guys that can really handle the ball on the team. So they're both most certainly in play with me. I don't believe I'll be going to necessarily like Sadiq Bey at 8K, almost 7,900. He should get the shot attempt, should get everything else with it. I'm not going to chase that Diallo game at 62. Another guy I don't mind, but I think he's priced to the point where, you're looking at a floor of about 24 to 25 and a ceiling of probably about 40. So you're kind of getting what you pay for at that 62. Like, again, I wouldn't fault you for going there. If you're landing on him, don't worry about changing it so much. But he just doesn't have that GPP upside that I'm really looking at. And then for the center position, there's a couple options we could look at. Luka Garza put up a nice game in the last one, only played 20 minutes and put up 31 DK points. So he's not necessarily getting a lion's share. We're seeing Check Diallo play about a decent amount of minutes as well. So if you need mid-salary guys, this is probably the game that you could take a good look at with Check Diallo, with Derek Walton Jr. I think both those guys are in play, but they're nowhere near like Sherlocks and must-play guys. I think Frank Jackson remains at the top tier of the guys I'm looking at on this team. On to the next game, Charlotte Hornets, Indiana Pacers. This is a 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time game. For the injury report, the Hornets, Miles Bridges, P.J. Washington, both ruled out. And then for the Pacers, Malcolm Brogdon is questionable. T.J. McConnell, T.J. Warren continue to be out for this team. They're not expected back probably for the remainder of the season at this point. Warren most likely. 227.5 game total. Indiana being favored by 2.5 points. We know any team going against Charlotte is going to have a pretty high game total. Played a decent amount of LaMelo Ball against Houston. Didn't work out the way I'd like because it ended up being a blowout. He only played 25 minutes. This game, expected to be a little bit closer. 9-9. Anytime he's under 10K, we're keeping it in the player pool. Absolutely, for sure. And then I think we go right back to the well with a guy like Jalen McDaniels. He only played about 27 minutes in that blowout, but he still managed 23.75 DK points at 4,200. If this game stays close, they need the size in the front court, going against Sabonis, going against Miles Turner. So I'd expect McDaniels to play closer to that 33-minute mark. Absolutely, those are my 2 favorite plays I'm looking at. And I wouldn't fault you if you wanted to go to some of these mid-tier plays with Hayward, Oubre, Rozier. There's going to be shots to go around with no Bridges in there. We saw Rozier put up 17 shots in only 27 minutes, came out with 44 DK points. So he'd probably be the guy I'm leaning towards the most. But again, it's really like pick your poison and throw a dart at the board when it comes to these 3 guys. They're all going to shoot a ton. Hayward's probably the one guy on the outside looking in between Oubre and Rozier. But for the most part, I'm looking at LaMelo. I'm looking at McDaniels, and I don't mind dart throws and a couple of GPPs at these other guys. Those mid-tier guys are more pivots off some other plays, which we'll get to later.
It's gifting season. No one returns alcohol. So this year, get everyone on your list the gift of beer, wine, and spirits delivered with Drizzly in under 60 minutes. Right now, Drizzly is giving every new customer $5 off their first order. Just use the promo code FAST5 at checkout. So download Drizzly app now or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com and use the promo code FAST5 for $5 off your first order. And get that delivered in under 60 minutes. Get it when you need it. You can also conveniently shop across stores, so you can choose from a huge selection and get exactly what you want. And you have the benefit of finding out the best deals on what you're looking for, as you can compare prices across those multiple stores. Drizzly is the most convenient way to buy beer, wine, and spirits with delivery to your doorstep in under 60 minutes. Drizzly is the #1 app for alcohol delivery. So download the Drizzly app now or go to drizzly.com. Again, that's DRIZLY.com and use the promo code FAST5 at checkout to get $5 off your first order.
On to the Pacers side of the ball. We have LeVert priced up at 91, Sabonis priced up at 10-7. LeVert has back-to-back 50-point games, and that's with Brogdon out. He's been handling the ball a lot more. We've seen, assist totals averaging 10 over the last 2 games. Certainly a guy that you want to look at, but 9-1 is just too expensive for me. If you have them leftover money, sure, why not? I think there's other guys I'd spend up on. I just don't want to pay that 9-1 price tag for him. I think I'm all set there. Not paying the 10-7 for Sabonis. This is a great matchup for him. Going against an undersized front court, but 10-7, we need a good 50 to 55 DK points at the very least for him to pay off that price tag. So I think these guys are just slightly overpriced to the point where it priced them out for me. I just don't want to get the shares. Duarte at 53, right where he should be priced. Not much floor, not much ceiling. He's okay. He's comfortable. I think we even have better cash plays that we could look at for cheaper price tags. So for the most part, I don't see myself going to all that much on this Indiana side of the ball, which is very awkward for me. Uncomfortable, we could say, because I normally like to target Charlotte greatly. I mean, if you're doing a little bit of a mini game stack, then sure. If you're playing LaMelo and you want to run it back with somebody, I don't mind it just because of the matchup that they're in. For the most part, these price tags kind of take a lot of the luster away from these guys. On to the 7:30 Eastern Standard Time game. We have the LA Clippers traveling to Boston, taking on the Celtics. Celtics dealing with their own share of injuries that we have to talk about over here. But for the most part, Bruno Fernando, Enes Kanter, CJ Miles, Aaron Naismith, Dennis Schroeder, Jason Tatum all ruled out. Marcus Smart is questionable, dealing with that hand laceration, forced him to sit out that last game. For the Clippers, Batum, Paul George, Isaiah Hartenstein, Reggie Jackson, Kawhi Leonard, Jason Preston, Jay Scrubb, and Moses Wright have all been ruled out. Looking at a game total, we do not have one yet, so we're going to have to keep an eye on that. Starting off with this Clippers team, probably going to be the same guys I've been playing. It's going to be Bledsoe at 6,400, another one of those guards. You'll hear me say in that high 5s, low 6 range that we're going to have like 3 or 4 of these guys until they price him up. And yes, he's coming off of a little bit of a down game, but it was in 28 minutes in a blowout against Brooklyn. I anticipate this game stays fairly close with them missing some of their, bigger bodies. No Tatum's definitely going to impact them. Possibly no Smart's going to impact them. If Smart plays, maybe go to one of these other options that we'll talk about. But nonetheless, I think that Eric Bledsoe most certainly in play. And then we saw Marcus Morris return in that last game. So he ended up playing 27 minutes in his first game back, put up 40 DK points. At 5,400, he's certainly in play. They're going to need some size. We'll see a combination of probably Morris, Zubats, and Serge Ibaka. All probably play those high 20 minutes with maybe Serge Ibaka being on the lower end of that. But they're going to need the size going against the Celtics front court because that's the one thing that is healthy. They do have, Al Horford, and they do have Robert Williams both available. So I'll be looking at Morris. I'll be looking at Bledsoe. Those will be my 2 top options. Zubats always remains a pivot off of some of these other 5K guys, but that's all he is. He's not a core play. You'll hear me talk about a few other guys in a little bit. On the Boston side of the ball, if Marcus Smart's ruled out, you could certainly go right back to the Pritchard well at 5K. Dude played a boatload of minutes, 44 minutes. I would say he's in play either way, even if we see Smart play. He should still get significant minutes, but 5K is a pretty expensive price tag for him. Now, listen, if Smart sits, it's not expensive enough. If Smart plays, it's somebody that I think we could shy away from. It'd be pretty chalky if Smart sits. So if it merits the fade due to ownership, if you're playing multi-entry GPPs, I certainly get that. But most certainly in play for me. And then Jaylen Brown, priced all the way up to 10K. This guy averages about 1.37 DK points per minute when Tatum's off the floor. 10K is still probably not high enough. He probably should be more like 10.3, 10.4. I think that we have a number of guys that we could spend up on this slate, but I prefer him over guys like, Westbrook. I prefer him. I'd probably still slightly prefer LaMelo, but Jaylen Brown's a little bit safer. I think I prefer him over Trey, who's $1,000 more. LeBron gets a little dicey with how well he's been playing at 11-8. So I'm going to keep Brown in my player pool. He has that small forward eligibility, which none of those other guys I mentioned have. So I think that's what it's going to come down to, is how your builds turn out and what positions you want to spend up on. On to the next game. Atlanta Hawks traveling to Chicago, taking on the Bulls here. For the injury report and the Hawks, buckle up. It's a long one. Bogdan Bogdanovic, John Collins, Sharif Cooper, Gorgie Dang, Malik Ellison, Danilo Gallinari, Solomon Hill, Kevin Huerter, DeAndre Hunter, Wes Iwundu, Jalen Johnson, Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, Onyeka Okongwu, Lou Williams, and DeLon Wright are all out. Hawks are battered and bruised. For the Bulls, Lonzo Ball, Tony Bradley, Alex Caruso, Ersan Ilyasova, Alfonso McKinney, Patrick Williams, and Derek Jones Jr. is questionable. So, number of guys out on both sides of the ball, which always means that we should have some value available creeping up around the corner for this game. So, got to monitor the starting lineup. We've kind of seen it be a little fluid for Atlanta, but with Trae Young back, we know where the usage is going to go. So I already told you, 11K, the dude's an absolute stud. He's going to be the only one on this team able to pretty much do anything. But at 11K, I think there's other options I'd rather spend up on. Just my personal recommendation and what I'm currently doing. I wouldn't fault you for going there. It's Trae Young, a guy that can get 10 dimes and 30 points on any given night. Cam Reddish coming off of a monster game where he took 23 shot attempts. So put up 33 real-life points, put up 42 DK points at 6,200. I'll fade that, and I'll let other people take it. I had him. I had him everywhere, especially in my turbo slates. He was 100% owned in my turbo slates. I had about 18, maybe 20% owned in my 20-entry GPP maxes. So I think he's still certainly in play. I just don't want to chase this game. At 6,200, I'd prefer guys – we'll get to them like Derek White, maybe even a Bledsoe, some of these other guys in that 6K range at that guard position. Comes into play due to that small forward eligibility, but for the most part, just don't see myself going to him all that much. The one guy I do want to talk about is going to be Brown Jr. He played 30 minutes in that last one. I anticipate another 30-minute game from him. 3,300, near min-salary guy at that small forward position. Not going to have a ton of usage. Only took 7 shot attempts. But listen, he only knocked down one of those and still put up almost 20 DK points. So when you're looking at a min-salary guy that you need some value for, I think that Brown Jr. is most certainly in play. He's probably going to be one of my primary targets from this side of the ball at the very least. But with all these guys out, dart throws all over the place. There's going to be minutes to go around. I'm not playing guys like Lance Stevenson, though. It would probably mostly be Brown Jr., and I wouldn't argue with any of these spend-ups. If you wanted to go to a Capella, a Young, or Cam Reddish, wouldn't fault you. Just don't see myself going there all that much myself. On the other side of the ball, DeRozan, Levine, both these guys are just having the offense funnel through them. I think most people are probably going to keep going to the 2 stud builds with all the value that just keeps cropping up all over the place. So who do I prefer in this? I say probably Levine in this matchup. I had to do a little bit more DeRozan in that last one. Started hopping off of him at the last minute and switched to a little Levine. And they were fairly close. Levine put up 52. DeRozan put up, I think 56, 57. You're getting a little discount with DeRozan, but he's only power forward eligible, while Zach LaVine has that dual eligibility. I'd rather not play Vucevic at 9K. It's actually a really good price tag for him, but he's coming off of his best game of the season, 65.75 DK points. I'm not chasing that. I'll let other people box score chase. Not a thing I'm into. So for me, it's going to be those 2 top dogs. And if you want to go to a little Kobe White at 45, sure, why not? Played 25 minutes in that last one. We haven't seen a big blow-up game for him. And it's not that same circumstance where he's actually just sharing a lot of the usage. He's getting third, fourth fiddle next to these other 3 studs. So I wouldn't say that, I love the ceiling. I just love the matchup. Anytime a point guard is going against Trae Young, I will keep them in my player pool. For the most part, though, just the 2 top dogs with DeRozan and Levine. 5th game of the night, LA Lakers traveling to Memphis, taking on the Grizzlies here. Lakers on the second half of a back-to-back. No injury report for the Grizzlies. Dylan Brooks, Jarrett Culver, John Conchar, DeAnthony Melton, Sam Merrill, Zaire Williams, all in the health and safety protocol. No game total, no spread. For the Lakers, LeBron James, 11-8. Yeah, he's in play. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I had a ton of them on today's slate simply because of my builds and the way it was looking. The Houston Rockets matchup is fantastic. And knowing that I didn't love a lot of these power forward options that we had available, so I just ended up landing on him more than Jokic. Most given nights, I'm playing Jokic over him, but it all comes down to your builds. It's not necessarily about worrying about trying to get the highest scoring guy in there, but more or less that everybody in your lineup puts out a high output. So I think LeBron's certainly in play. I'm not playing Westbrook at 10-5. No, thank you. Prefer somebody on the other side of the ball way more. And then we also saw LeBron play that center position. So, keep an eye on it. It could happen again, but knowing that this front court's a little bit bigger than the Rockets, they're probably going to end up starting Adams and Jaren Jackson alongside of him, while the Rockets normally just start Christian Wood. We probably won't see that, and if that's the case, we'll most likely see Dwight Howard. Hopefully it's Dwight Howard, not DeAndre Jordan, draw the start. But keep your eye on that whole news. Not a lot of interest for this team in general outside of LeBron. I can see Melo at 5,200, but I think we'll have better forward plays available when it's all said and done. I guess Malik Monk drew the start tonight. I like him better coming off the bench. So if he draws the start, no interest. If he comes off the bench, I will have interest. More usage on that bench. We don't want him sharing the ball with Westbrook and LeBron. It's just want the guy to have the ball in the hands. Next, or other side of the ball, John Morant, 8,800, most certainly in play. I love targeting point guards going against the Lakers. It's something I always look at every single time they're on the slate. 8,800 is too cheap for John Morant. The dude put up 66 DK points against his team earlier this season on 13 of 21 shooting. Had a 40-point double-double with 10 assists. Absolutely in play for me. I love this price tag. He's one of my favorite point guards on the slate. Probably one of my favorite spend-ups in general. And he's a lot cheaper than some of these other guys. So I actually prefer him over some of these other guys like Trae Young, who is $2,200 more than him. I think I'd rather play Morant. That discount that I'm getting with Morant with this very similar upside, sign me up. I'm good with that. Outside of him, I think you look at Kyle Anderson with John Conchar now in the health and safety protocols. We're probably looking at close to 30 minutes from Anderson coming off the bench. Could even draw the start. I like him better when he starts the power forward position, so he's not like a must play by any means necessary, but I definitely think he's going to get a little bit of a bump with John Conchar now in the health and safety protocol. So those are the two main options I'm looking at. Jaren Jackson's always a pivot, but I really like to try to pinpoint his matchups, and he should have a pretty good one going against this Lakers team, but I'm not trying to get overboard or go overboard on a lot of these Memphis guys, so I just don't see him myself having more than maybe 10% shares of them in the 20 entry max, essentially, two lineups, but I'm not going to rule them out either. Miami Heat traveling to San Antonio, taking on the Spurs here. No injury report for Miami. Second half of a back-to-back for the Spurs. DeJounte Murray and Zach Collins continue to be out. And as we know, Miami dealing with their own health and safety protocol issues and injuries. Max Strus in the health and safety protocols with Kyle Lowry. PJ Tucker, Dedmon, Bam, all missed tonight's game with injuries. And then we know that Markieff Morris is still out because he got beat up by Jokic. I'm going to go back to the well at a lot of these same spots here in this Miami game. It's going to be the big man that I've been getting plenty of shares of, and I will continue to play because he's not priced high enough, and it's Omer Yurtseven. He's my favorite center on the slate at 4,600. We know that they're going to play big with Pirtle, so sign me up. Yurtseven. He's been absolutely crushing. The dude's a fantastic point-per-minute player. As long as he's playing even 25 to 30 minutes at that price tag, we're going to have just a ton of interest in him. Favorite center. Don't be surprised if he's one of my favorite values when we get to the end of this show, too. Excuse me, take a sip of water. I'm coughing over here. Talking too fast. Absolutely love him. Probably sounds like this podcast is on like 2 times speed right now. I assure you, it's not. Outside of him, I played a ton of Jimmy Butler on tonight's slate. It's not as great of a matchup for him, but he's certainly still going to be in play at 9,300. He should be a 10K price tag guy as long as we see Kyle Lowry is out. And then Tyler Hero continue to have the second most shot attempts on this team. Continue to rock a high usage. The game should be close. Those are the 3 guys I'm looking at. They're all in play. I can see having 1 to 2 of these guys in most of my lineups for sure because there's somebody on the other side of the ball I really want to run it back with as well. Look at that segue. Derek White, 6,800. Yes, he is in play. I prefer him over Bledsoe. The dude is just handling the ball, and that's what we like to see. Normally, it's a DeJounte Murray role. He's playing 30-plus minutes as long as the game stays close, and he should have at least 7 to 10 assists as long as this game stays close. Coupled with the fact that he's a great three-point shooter, and he'll continue to take at least 5 to 6 three-pointers and 15-plus shot attempts. Sign me up. Derek White is in play. He's one of my favorite guard options that we have on this slate. So give me some Derek White. Run it back with some Yurtseven, maybe another guy, and I think you have yourself a nice little mini game stack here. It's just 2 competitive teams. Now, this game won't have the highest game total. It'll probably be fairly low scoring, especially with Miami being on the second half of a back-to-back. But we have options. We always have options. We have options to take a look at. Outside of Derek White, I think you could pick your poison with one of these rotational bench guards that normally come off the bench, like a Lonnie Walker. You could look at a Devin Vassell. I don't mind them. I don't think they're the greatest plays. I don't think they're the worst. But keep them in your player pool. Again, one of the type of guys where if maybe you're not playing White and you happen to land on him, sure, why not? But trying to sit here and pinpoint which one's going to have a better game when I don't think either one of them have the highest of upsides is not something I'm really into. I think we have better options that we'll get to and already have talked about. Next two games, a little bit less competitive is what I imagine. OKC traveling to Phoenix. OKC on the second half of a back-to-back, no injury report. DeAndre Ayton, Jay Crowder, Frank Kaminsky, Abdul Nader, Dario Saric, Ish Wainwright have all been ruled out. 217 game total in this one. No game totals for those other games, as I just mentioned, so we're just going to have to wait and see on those. But 217, Phoenix being favored at the moment. Buckle up for this. Probably one of the largest spreads that I've seen before a game started. 15 points. Yeah, you heard that correctly. I said 15 points. It's a 15-point spread being favored towards the wonderful Phoenix Suns. So, yeah, take what you want from that. Spreads don't mean everything. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Nonetheless, it's what we have to deal with. Looking at this wonderful, wonderful Oklahoma City team, I'm not spending up on Shea in this type of matchup. Honestly, it's just going to be a couple of value options that I have any interest in. Isaiah Roby drew the start. As I'm recording this, it's still the first quarter. He has the first 8 minutes played. Yeah, that's enough for me to consider Isaiah Roby at mid-salary, 3K. Wouldn't expect all that much from him, but if we can get 25 from him, possibly 30, we would take that for sure. Mid-salary, 100%. We're cool with that. And then I don't mind looking at a guy like Muscala, another bench option. Didn't start, but came off the bench, played. He's going to probably end up playing 20, 25 minutes when it's all said and done. And then I think Kenrich Williams at 4K, getting a little bit of a price bump. It was 3,700 the night before. Did not draw the start, so it takes a little luster away, but keep an eye on the lineup on a back-to-back. We could see them switch things up a little bit. But mostly Roby's the top guy that I'm looking at. On the Phoenix side of the ball, Mcgee at 5,100, certainly in play. I prefer year 7 over him. A little bit of a down game, down minutes from Mcgee in that last one against Memphis. Nonetheless, he fouled out very quickly. So let people box score chase. If they don't see it, they don't see it. But at 5,100, he's most certainly definitely in play. Now, if the game gets out of hand, we could see him hit the pine pretty quickly. But don't be scared off about that game total and the minutes played. It was the foul trouble that really caused him an issue in that last one. If for some reason this game stays close and he stays out of foul trouble, he's playing 30 plus and crushing that 5,100 price tag. Probably the only guy I have any real interest in outside of maybe like a campaign who ended up playing 36 minutes himself and put up 33 DK points. Those are the two guys I'm really looking at, although Booker and Paul maintain to have delicious-looking price tags. So, I mean, maybe if you're running it back with Shea, but there's no one I really want to run it back with any confidence. 2 games left, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time game. Utah Jazz traveling to Portland, taking on the Trailblazers. For Portland, Robert Covington, CJ McCollum, Ben McLemore, Yusuf Nurkic, Dennis Smith Jr., Cody Zeller, Trendon Watford, all ruled out, and the Jazz are healthy and good to go outside of Donovan Mitchell, who we know is dealing with his own injury. We're seeing these guys' price tags get a little bit of a bump now. Rudy Gobert up to 9,800. It's a fantastic matchup. I'm probably all set. Only 2 real options I would look at would be Joe Ingles, 4K. Still too cheap for him with no Mitchell. We see him play significant minutes every single time. And then Jordan Clarkson at 5,800. The price bump feels a little bit high, but the matchup's absolutely fantastic. So those are the 2 guys I'm mainly looking at, and the only 2 guys. They both just get a nice big usage bump and minutes bump with no Donovan Mitchell, and that should continue in this matchup. For the Portland side of the ball, normally I would say target Larry Nance. Not the best matchup going against Rudy Gobert. Nonetheless, we don't play Larry Nance for his offense. You play him for his rebounds. You play him for his, how he gets into the passing lanes. He comes up with a couple of steals. You play him for those transition dunks. I think he makes for a good pivot in GPPs. Obviously, going against Gobert and this Utah team, it's going to make you feel a little weary when you're talking about your cash games and your single entries. But I'm not ruling him out just yet. I think he's certainly still in play. Don't mind Nasir Little at 5K, but I'm not chasing that 48 DK point game. That's the one thing that leaves me a little bit uncomfortable. I don't think he's going to drop another one like that. I think we're looking at more of like a 25, high upside of 30, which would still get things done for us, but we're going to need a little bit more. I'm just not chasing the upside in a game, in a matchup like this one. And then Lillard at 10-6. I want to say no, but I feel like Lillard just kind of crushes these matchups. I'm going to say no. John Morant, give me him over him. Final game of the night, Dallas Mavericks traveling to Sacramento, taking on the Kings. Kings on the second half of a back-to-back for the Mavs, though. Trey Burke, Willie Cauley-Stein, Luka Doncic, Tim Hardaway Jr., Maxi Kleber, all ruled out. We do not have a game total for this one. Oh, that last game total, 230. Utah favored by 6 in that one. Keep an eye on the Sacramento team on the second half of the back-to-back. Should be good to go for the most part. Porzingis now all the way priced up at 9-4. Coming off of a big game, one of his biggest of the season, a 34-9-5, 2-2 game, putting up 62.25 DK points. It's an expensive price tag for him. Keeping him in the player pool for now because I think with Luka off the floor in this matchup, he has 50-point upside pretty easily. Just a little risky. Definitely a little risky. Mavs have actually been playing really good basketball as of late, so that we don't necessarily have to worry about a blowout against this Kings team. But with they're probably going to throw the whole ship and sink at him. Brunson at 7,900. I prefer Derek White for much cheaper. I prefer Bledsoe for a little cheaper. I prefer, John Morant for $900 more. I like him in the matchup. I just don't see myself going to him. He maybe be a little bit of a pivot off those guys, but I couldn't even say a pivot because he's not even that close in the price range where we can really just say, swap to him. You're not really swapping to him when you're overspending by $900 or $1,000 more than some of these other guys. Outside of those two guys, I think Frank Ntilikina at 3,700 remains an option. The minutes were down in that last one, but it was also a blowout. But 3,700, we talked about a few other value plays on this slate. He's certainly an option. Sacramento side of the ball, second half of the back-to-back, not paying 86 for Halliburton. I'm not paying 69 for Hield. I think 55 for Rashawn Holmes, certainly an option. The minutes have been down over the past 2 games as he's coming back from the injury. Those were also blowouts. Now, keep in mind, this is a second half of the back-to-back for him. So let's wait and see how he finishes this game. If we see upwards of 28 to 30 minutes, we can run right back to the well with him. He's not dealing with COVID or conditioning or anything like that. It was an eye injury. So I certainly think that we can look at some Rashawn Holmes at 5,500. That's a fantastic price tag and a great matchup. Probably my number one option on this team and one of the only guys I'm looking at, but I wouldn't fault you if you're playing De'Aaron Fox. Just not somebody I've played too much of all season long. So if you like him, play him. I try not to recommend guys I don't play, though. I think that's why you probably listen to this. So sometimes I get them right, sometimes I don't. But I'd like to think for the most part I get a good amount right. And that brings us to the end. That is all 9 games. I told you, 2 times speed, motored through in 30 minutes. Now let's get to everyone's favorite, the player tier segment, where I will give 2 guys at each position because I am by myself. My number one play, like I said, I'm going to have a fair amount of John Morant at 8,800 in this matchup against the Lakers. Expected to be competitive. Wouldn't be surprised if we see the, Grizz come out with a nice sizable win here, and that's going to be on the back of John Morant at 8,800. Sign me up there. And then for our top tier, you could run it back with LeBron. I wouldn't fault you there. But I would look at LaMelo. Coming off of a game where it was a blowout and he only played 25 minutes. He only played 25 minutes over the last 2 games. If people box score chase, let them. Because the guy almost had 40 DK points in 25 minutes. If he plays another 5 to 10 minutes, we're looking at an easy 50 right there. So I'll look at the 2 guards as my 2 top spend-up options. Now, if we slide over to the mid-tier, I mentioned a few guys, and you're probably going to hear their names again right now. Derek White. I'll continue to go back to that well at 6,800. Certainly an option for me. Just the guy with no DeJounte Murray, the usage jumps up, the ball handler responsibilities jump up, everything just kind of skyrockets for him. And that makes it worthwhile. Until he's like 7,500 with DeJounte off the floor, I'm going to continue to play him. It's just that simple. And then if we're looking at another guy in the mid-tier, a couple of options I could go with here. I really want to keep an eye on Rashawn Holmes, but at 5,500, I love that price tag for him. So that's the guy I'm going to go with now. But monitor the minutes. If there's any word that he's not going to play a full complement, then that's something that we have to be a little bit concerned with. But as of now, as it stands, he's probably one of my favorite mid-tier. And then for the value, we'd go Pritchard too. If Smart's out, I'd say Pritchard too. Probably, a little bit more safe. If we see Smart's out, we'll have that news relatively early because it's a pretty early game. For the value, Omer Yurtseven, 4,600. Sign me up. Not much more needs to be said. Having a killer game again tonight. We continue to go back to that well. And then for the other value play, plenty of options. We're going to want to see what some of these starting lineups look like. But one thing we do know is that our guy, getting ready to cough. Had to mute the mic real quick. Joe Ingles will continue to play big minutes at 4K. No Donovan Mitchell. Still too cheap for him. Should be around that 5K mark. Gives you a nice, comfortable floor. Has a decent ceiling. I do like me some Ingles. Also offers that small forward eligibility. was thinking McDaniels, but we'll go Ingles. And then now on to our Thrive Fantasy prop picks of the night. Now, there's a lot of easy cash ones that we see, whether you want to go Bledsoe, steals, Kemba Walker assists, a lot of easy ones that you could probably just lock in right now and feel good about, but you're not going to get those high point totals from. So without those high point totals, we're going to need a little bit more from some other people. Now, some options I think that are pretty comfortable. Mike Conley, 14.5 points, gives you 110 points. I do like that one. So sign me up with Mike Conley over 14.5 points. And then for giggles, we'll throw another one over here. Trying to find a decent one. I say Zach LaVine. It's only 90 points with 8.5 rebounds and assists. I think it's pretty comfortable for a guy that should be getting 5 and 5 in this game. Going against Atlanta, fast-paced matchup. Going against second unit guys. I like that one as well. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike Apotria, MikeApotria. Go give us a thumbs up, a 5-star, subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you get the notification as soon as the podcast gets posted. You can listen to it on your way to work, when you're having your morning coffee, whatever you're doing. Go for your morning stroll, walk your dog, start the podcast. The best way to start your day. This is a first look podcast. If you're looking for additional information, you can get it from the behind the scene articles if you have that DFS pass, or join us in our Discord where I'm in there every night, 1 hour before lock, passing out my favorite plays, my highest owned players, answering questions. If you're stuck on, this guy or this guy, which 2v2 do you like more, whatever it may be, I'm there to help, and that's what we do it for. So thank you guys for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. It'll be Harris and myself crushing that wonderful Thursday slate for you guys. As always, thank you. Take care, and let's go take down some tournaments.
Gearheads know that some projects need so many parts, it feels like you need a whole storage unit just to store them. That's what eBay Motors' 122 million parts are for. Think of it as your virtual parts garage. They've always got the right fitment at the right prices. Use the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.